Yeah. Wait,
Okay, very
am I
good.
starting? Are you
No,
gonna?
no, I'm gonna do an introduction. So
Okay.
welcome everybody back to another installment of AAF Creative Zen, a monthly breakfast lecture series, mini TED Talk that we hold for free for the creative community every second Friday morning of the month, with support from the American Advertising Federation local chapter of the Greater Fort Lauderdale and the Palm Beaches, as well as with some support from the old Choose 954 network. If you didn't know what a monthly breakfast lecture series or mini TED Talk is, we bring in a thought-provoking, hopefully inspiring speaker to share their relatable, down-to-earth, real story of how they've got to the point in their life journey and career that they're at now. And this one is very serendipitous, as we met Enid when she was a speaker at a previous format just under 4 years ago, when her life was a little bit different. And we're so proud of how far she's come since then. And we're really excited to have her share her story. If you didn't know about the American Advertising Federation, just to give you a little blip, they are the membership-based organization that supports professionals in the advertising industry. They provide continuing learning opportunities, networking, engagement opportunities like Creative Zen, in addition to a bunch of other in-person and virtual events. They've been bringing in some other great speakers on some other great topics recently. Affiliate marketing. Next one's going to be with Shabara Oren, former Creative Zen speaker on diversity and inclusion. And they also go like to Tallahassee and DC and lobby on behalf of the advertising industry to get more support. If you are a creative advertiser, marketer, you work for an agency, or you're an independent, or you just want to be around more like-minded creatives and individuals, see what all these Addy Awards are all about, you can find out more by logging on to check out the American Advertising Federation at aafsfl.org. And it is a nonprofit, membership-based, and they do appreciate your support because they support us in making these events happen. And if you didn't know what Choose 954 is, myself, Evan Snow, and my business partner, Mr. Andrew Martineau, as very proud Broward County residents, and myself being a native, started the social movement to cultivate culture and community here in Broward County, keep people to know with a lot of great things going on in an effort to make this a better place to live and not just a better place to vacation. So if you want to find out more, you can go on to Choose 954 socialmedia.com, find out about things like the Dania Night Market tonight, every second and fourth Friday, and hopefully have you gain a better appreciation for your community and some civic pride. So we love doing this stuff because I had my aha moment from an event very similar to this just over 5 years ago, when a woman by the name of Alexa Rose Carlin gave her creative talk in the morning, and served as my aha moment that led me on this creative journey down the path that I'm on, doing the things that I'm doing, creating community, supporting artists, and that's why I like to pay it back and pay it forward. So that's what we're doing here this morning. Appreciate you guys tuning in. And this month, we are very, very excited to bring you our friend and the Natty Award winner, Enid Nolasco, the founder and creative director of not only Raw Made, but previously before COVID, Raw Storytelling, which you might be familiar with. She's an expert in brand development, graphic design, and brand management with over 17 years of experience in the media and design industry, and has a master of fine art in branding. Throughout the years, she's worked alongside award-winning branding agencies and as a solopreneur, transforming businesses into thriving brands by taking what already makes them successful and refining it into a captivating brand we can't stop drooling over. Enid truly believes we all have a story to tell as individuals and businesses. Her strategic and intuitive ability to uncover the story hidden beneath the surface is at the very heart of Raw Made. And without much further ado, we bring you our dear friend, one of my favorite people, Enid Nolasco.
That was a great intro, I have to say. I thank you so much for inviting me to do this. Yeah, I think most people know that Evan and I go back 4 years, and he has been instrumental to me living the life that I live now. And he will definitely pop up in my talk today. So thank you for inviting me to do this. It means the world to me, and I'm so happy that we get to spend our Friday morning together. Yeah, so most of you know that I usually tell stories. I just start talking, but I actually prepared a story for today, which is not common. I was inspired this past weekend by like just thinking about like what am I gonna say at Creative Zen, and I wrote down a story, which is very uncommon for me. So if you see me looking at my notes, it's because there's a lot of points that I want to touch that are very important for me to share with you. And so yeah, I'm not gonna read everything. I just want to make sure I don't miss anything. And I'm going to be sharing a presentation as well. So yes, but yes, I'm going to get started, and then I'm going to talk about who I am in the middle of my story, because I like to start my stories in the middle. So yeah, so a couple, I don't know, some time back, I was talking to a therapist and sharing with the therapist my life story. You know, in the beginning, when you go to therapy, they're like, tell me everything, and you just start from the beginning. So I was blabbering. I talk a lot, and I'm on and on and on. Like an hour later, the therapist says, like, you're the most courageous person that I've ever met. And I, like, what followed was a moment of bewilderment and silence, because I was like, who is she talking about? Because every day when I wake up, the first thought that pops into my head is, I wish I was a brave and courageous person. I sincerely think I am one of the most fearful damn cowards in the world. And I could not believe that she was saying this. I couldn't believe her at all. But she just hadn't met me at the moment. And I was like, why? I don't understand at all. So no matter how far back I go in my childhood memories, I cannot remember a time where I was not consumed by fear. Like the biggest joke around my friends is that I am afraid of ordering a drink at the bar. Like that gives me anxiety. But however, the funniest thing is that most people, when they describe me, they're like, oh, she's like a leader. She's fearless. She takes over, she hosts, she runs things. And I'm like, how the hell did this happen where in my life people see me as a leader, but in my mind, it's not reality. That's not how I see myself. So that led me to retrace my steps of my life and figure out how I was underestimating myself. Like, how did this happen? How did I underestimate myself? And I chose to talk about this today because I think we should all give ourselves a tiny little bit more credit for the things that we accomplish in life. Just a tiny little bit, not too much. I'm not going to push you too much. And I realize that it takes a lot of time to get your goals to come true. And not only that, but life happens as you try to get your goals to come true, as you try to work on your goals. And on top of that, your goals might not end up where you think they'll end up. And that's the magic, you know, not like where you have maybe a plan and it goes sideways and you end up somewhere else. And that's the magic. So that's kind of what I'm going to be talking about today. And the theme for today, which is very typical for me. I usually am either talking about something raunchy or branding. So today it's going to be very like emotional, I guess. So I'm going to share my screen and I'm going to literally walk you through my life. I went down memory lane with pictures and you're going to see a lot of me. So prepare yourselves. Okay, so, okay. Let me pull up. Oh, by the way, I am so used to teaching and training, and if you want to interrupt me or put stuff in the chat, I encourage you. I am the most laid back, unformal person you'll ever meet. So don't feel like you need to sit back and just do nothing. You know, if you want to say comment, I'm all for it. Okay. So yeah, so today in 2021, I am a brand designer, like Evan mentioned. I own Raw Made, a branding and design studio, and I'm also the host of Raw Storytelling, a true storytelling podcast. I will get more into Raw Storytelling and Raw Made later on, but right now, this is who I am. I'm single, I'm Latinx, I'm specifically Puerto Rican, I'm queer, and I stutter, right? Those are the most important things that you need to know right now about me. So I've stuttered since I was about 3 or 4 years old. I was born in Costa Rica to a Puerto Rican family, but that's another long story. I was born in Costa Rica and I only spoke Spanish until I moved to Washington, D.C. When I was 3 or 4. And when they took me to the nursery or like the pre-kinder thing, I had to learn English, and something happened in my brain where I just started stuttering. I actually have no idea if it was the language or something happened in my childhood that I'm blocking and I can't remember, but something happened that I started stuttering. And although my family is great, my family is very supportive in their own way. They never really did anything about it. They never took me to speech therapy. They mostly made fun of me for it, and not a mean way, but they thought it was just like either something that would go away, or something that didn't really matter and wouldn't affect me. So it was kind of one of those things where I learned that my issues, I had to deal with them inside, because if I talked about them, then they would be made fun of, right? On top of that, I moved around a lot in the United States as a kid, and I got taunted for the color of my skin, for being Latinx, for being shy, for the way I looked, and of course for my stuttering. Yeah, I wouldn't say I was bullied, but I definitely was not accepted, right? Yeah, so that was kind of my childhood. Then that led on all the way through middle school and high school. So at this point, these photos are from actually when I was in high school. I know I look the same. It's definitely the Puerto Rican genes. This was actually in the 1990s. And at some point in high school, I decided that, so this is a funny story. I have no idea. I don't know if I made this memory, or if this is an actual memory. But I remember somebody saying or hearing that when you sing, you don't stutter. And that's because of the breathing pattern that you need when you're singing. It controls your stuttering. And I was like, I'm going to teach myself to not stutter. That was like just like a thought that I had back in high school. So I did two things. I started working on my breathing patterns, and I started to breathe slower. And I also started this thing where, because I know when I can't say a word before I say it, I started to look for synonyms to replace the words that I knew I couldn't say. And I basically became like a living thesaurus, right? Little did I know, I found out 20 years later that these are actually the actual tools that speech therapists use on people that stutter. I had no idea. It was pure coincidence. So it comes to the point where, yeah, so this is something that I worked on and on and on to the point where it took me over a decade, over 10 years to perfect this. And I will say today at 37, I can find synonyms in milliseconds. I have it's like a little dictionary in my head. But at the time, this was a very slow process, and it took me 10 years. But, meanwhile, life goes on. I was very shy, very depressed in high school. I made friends for the first time in 6th grade, and those friends, actually, it's this girl and this girl, these two girls like followed me through all the way until I graduated high school, and those were my only real two friends. So actually, they're here, right? So, but you know what? Life keeps happening. So I end up at some point, I have to go to university, because in Puerto Rico, everyone goes to university. It's very common. So since I was like a teen or a kid, I always wanted to work for myself. I wanted to be a solopreneur. I didn't know that was the name at the time, but I knew I didn't want a day job. But I also thought that was not an option, because I couldn't even talk. So how could I run a business? So I had no choice but to do what everyone else was doing. But I still was like, hey, if I can't own a business, at least I'll study something fun. And I have always been obsessed with TV. So I was accepted into the University of Puerto Rico, which is like a prestigious university in Puerto Rico. And I was graduated with a degree in TV, film, and radio production. And but even though I was in the career that I loved, I was always like, I'm going to work behind the scenes creating stories because I will never have the personality to ever run a TV show or even be in these meetings with these like big studio executives or celebrities. I was like, no, I need to make sure I'm always behind the scenes. And basically, I weaseled my way into becoming a video editor. And if you don't know what a video editor is, basically, they're the people that sit in a very, very dimly lit room for 14 hours a day with the computer by themselves, and they edit shows and movies together. And I was definitely behind the scenes, and I was definitely very, very lonely. But that's what I thought I could do. I was like, well, I can't do anything. I can't really talk. I'm really shy, so I just need to be behind the scenes. And that's the way it was. Um, and that's fine. I mean, I thought that was the limit of what I could do. Meanwhile, life goes on. Life goes on. And although when I was in college, although I came into college straight, I ended up falling in love with my best friend, who happened to be a girl. And I convinced her, she was a photographer, I convinced her to move to New York City, where I, in my mind, would continue my film career. So what happened was that in Puerto Rico, I was a small fish I was a big fish in a small pond. And when I moved to New York City, I was a drop in the bucket of everyone else in New York City who's trying to make their film career. And at this point, the odds were really against me. I was moving to a new place where I didn't know anybody. Everyone did the same thing that I did, but better. I was so shy that I couldn't talk. I couldn't get through interviews because I was kind of stuttering through them. Honestly, probably looking back, I was not stuttering that much, but in my mind, I was. Like if I stuttered once, I assumed that's it. On top of that, this is the early 2000s, and as a lesbian couple, we were getting kicked out of places, we were getting pointed at, we were being stopped on the street, we were being hit on, not hit, but hit on. So it was a lot going on. I left my friends and family and moved to a completely new place. My grandfather, who I was very close to, passed away a month after I moved. This was my first ever relationship in life. I was a late bloomer. I didn't have my first kiss until I was 21. And then I got assaulted in college by a guy and then ended up with a girl. So it's like, it was just so much happening, right? It was so much happening. And yeah, and it was like, well, now I just couldn't find my way in New York City. I really couldn't. I love the city. My heart is still there. I would love to move back one day, but there was just a lot of life going on at the same time in a very short period of time. So at 3 years into living in New York City, I was like, we were my at the time wife and I were like, we need to figure something new. The recession was just about to hit. We didn't even know. It was right there around the corner, and we're like, okay, let's let's do something new because the thing with film and TV is that you need to work for free a lot. You need to work for free on top of your day job. So you're working maybe a normal 9-hour shift, and then you have to go and work maybe 12 hours and you don't sleep. And at this point, we're like, well, we don't know what else to do. So what else could we do but move to Miami? We're like, let's do this. We packed our car. We had a friend that lived in South Beach. We had never ever come to Miami. We didn't know anything about it. We're like, let's just leave our life behind and see how Miami must be better. There's people that speak Spanish, so that's like, that this is our community. That's how we decided. And like, our friend is there, he'll give us a place to stay while we find a place of our own. So we ended up making the drive down, leaving our life behind in New York, and we moved to Miami in the middle of a heat wave and a recession. Not even planning for that, right? We obviously lost our jobs a couple months into moving down here. My ex was unemployed for a year. I was unemployed for 4 months. Um, we were extreme couponing. If you don't know what that is, it's a TLC show that we watched and learned how to extreme coupon to survive. It did save our lives to extreme coupon. We were hoarding toilet paper before it was a thing. Yeah, and then so then at some point when I didn't have a job, I decided, okay, if I'm going to switch careers, now's the time because this is the perfect time for a restart. Literally, there's nothing else to do. All the jobs are gone. I can start from scratch. I can maybe um, find a job where I'm not a drop in the bucket and see also like if I can get some life into me. And what ended up happening was that I ended up trying a couple things. I actually have a certificate. I don't know. I'm a certified wedding and event planner. Most people don't know this about me. Um, I will never, ever do weddings again. I cannot stand people crying over flowers and violins. It was one of the worst experiences in my life. And I learned that very quickly. So I did a couple other things I can't remember. I tried other avenues, but I ended up working as an admin or an assistant at a marketing agency. And I kind of liked it. And I was like, okay, this could be my new career in marketing. Not really knowing much about marketing itself. I did have a very vast knowledge about the media industry and the entertainment industry, but I never had really been on the PR and marketing side that much. But I was like, I'll give it a try. Um, and I ended up working at this agency, and it was hard. Like I did not have a great boss. During all of this, I was still stuttering a little bit. I even had to tell my boss that I couldn't answer the phone and with the name of the company because I could not say the name of the company, and that didn't go so well. That didn't go so well. But I was getting better and better, and it was at this agency that I came across the word branding, right? And I told my boss, I went down I was like a rabbit hole. It was literally, I equate it to like not knowing that you have, like not knowing that you like something, and like going to the restaurant and trying something new and being like, this is my new favorite food forever. Like I could not believe that this thing existed called branding. It was literally, it's storytelling for businesses. And I was already doing storytelling, but for movies and TV. And I was like, this is a thing. And I researched it and I found out that there was there at that time, there were only a couple masters in the world that offer masters in branding. I think it was Full Sail University, I think at NYU, and a couple more. I forget where in the world. And I told my boss, I was like, I'm going to do this, and she's like, oh, you're dumb. Like you like it's a waste of money and time for you to be doing this unless you're going to an Ivy League school. And I was like, well, I'm going to do it anyways. And on a whim, I enrolled in a $36,000 Master's in Fine Arts program in branding that I'm still paying to this day, but that's okay. I was definitely a whim. They told me that I would be able to pay it off in the first year. That has not happened at all, but oh well. But oh well. But during this time and during my master's program, I was working full time. I was married. This is an accelerated branding program or master's program where I did 2 years of a master's in 1 year. So it was like 60 credits in 1 year. It was crazy. On top of that, I had very intense surgery, which you can see here, because yes, I had photo shoots at the hospital before my surgery. Um, I had very intense surgery that took me 8 weeks to recuperate from, just to get to a level where I can sit at the desk. But somehow during all of this, I found out two things about myself. One was that one of my secret talents is determination. I taught myself how to design on top of my schoolwork, on top of my demanding job, on top of my surgery, On top of everything, I taught myself how to like do everything and become the valedictorian of my class. And two, I started noticing that people were not noticing that I stuttered. And that was pretty incredible. So I left that master's. That master's really changed my life. I'm still paying for this change in my life, but that master's changed my life in the way that I left there a lot more confident. I left there confident that I could communicate and that I could accomplish my dreams. And it kind of happened. So after this, I actually landed the job of my dreams at a branding agency in Fort Lauderdale that changed my life. And it was at that branding agency that the day that everything changed happened. That was Friday, May 12th, 2017. So I got to the point where I was feeling more confident in just speaking. And my boss at the time was offered to talk at Creative Mornings, which is an event similar to this. And he just didn't want to. He is also very shy. He's like, not my thing. And I blurted out, "Oh, I'll do it." And then he was like, "Sure, of course." And he spoke to the organizers and they allowed this random girl to come up and talk. And I was like, okay. And it was truly a whim. The talk was very similar to this, where I told my life story, but of course it ended right before this. I didn't know what was going to happen but after. And then at the end of the talk, my boss at the time asked, "So what's next?" And I didn't have anything prepared. And I blurted out, "I want to start a true storytelling show." And I said that because I was obsessed with podcasts and I love true storytelling. And there wasn't really something similar to what I liked in Fort Lauderdale. And it was at that moment that the crazy, amazing person that is Mr. Evan Snow blurted out, "You should come to Accent Club." And I was like, "Okay, whatever that is." And he's like, "Oh, it's a goal setting and free accountability group that meets up every other Tuesday in Fort Lauderdale." And it was a Friday, and it was the next Tuesday was the meeting. And at the time, I was like, I said yes to him. I said, yes, 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 sure, sure, sure. Totally not thinking I was going to go. I mean, knowing I was not going to go. I was like, that's not my thing. Like, it's a group of people. I have to talk and meet with people and random people. And at the time, I was honestly depressed. I was not fulfilled in my personal life or professional life. I had not reached the goals I wanted to reach. I was just very bored. I felt really insecure. I felt really, I didn't have any self-confidence. And I was like, there's no way I'm going to go to this random meeting that he's inviting me to. But I think I was so rock bottom that I ended up going because I was like, what else? How else can I hurt? And I was like, well, at that point, I was like, let me just figure out more ways to hurt. And that's how I ended up going, not because I wanted to, but because I was like kind of punishing myself, which is a very odd way to end up there. But I went. And I remember that I went to the meeting and somebody was like, "So why are you here? What's your goal?" And I was very shyly like, "I want to start a true storytelling show." Like, kind of like, I think I've been told that when I said it, I like had my hand over my mouth and everything, you know? And somebody raised their hand and was like, "Oh, I'll tell a story." And that person is still to this day one of my best friends, which is incredible. And then more people raised their hand, including Evan and others. And it literally 5 months to the date, on October 12th, 2017, I had my first true storytelling show, and I had like 60 people show up. And it could literally happen. And at this point, I am hosting on the mic an actual show. And at this point, I realize, oh, people really can't tell that I stutter. Like, when I tell them that I stutter, they're like, "No, you don't." And I'm like, it was like, oh, this is happening. Like this, in the moment, I guess in the moment, I didn't realize. It took time for me to look back and be like, oh, this is, my life is changing. And the show took off. like 2.5 years later, I'm literally being asked by Vizcaya Museum and Gardens to host a show on Valentine's Day in their like amazing castle. I've had shows at the World Erotic Art Museum. I've had shows at the Art of Recovery Film Festival at Art Fort Lauderdale. I've had sold out shows like back to back, like 4 or 5 months in a row, sold out shows. It became a podcast, which is what is going strong now during COVID. Um, I basically became so successful in my ventures that I got fired from my job. I became so successful that they fired me from my job. And 4 months after I got fired from my job, my wife and I got divorced. So literally in the matter of 4 weeks, I did not have a plan. I didn't have a plan. I didn't have an income. I didn't have a backup plan because I didn't have a spouse, and my family is not wealthy and could not sustain me. So I only had it myself. And at that point, um, during all of this, I forgot to mention that I had on the side started my own design business, but it was really like a weekends and night things. I wasn't really making any money. I think the most I had made was like $250 out of it. It was truly like a little side hustle that I had, or side project really. So at that point, I had no choice. I was like, I don't want to go back to working for somebody else. I have no choice but to make it as a solopreneur. And and I think that I would have not been able to do that if I had not gone through everything that I've told you so far that gave me the confidence that I can do anything. And that was 3 years ago. That was 3 years ago. So this little stuttering kid, shy kid who was so fearful and like she was so afraid to go after what she wanted in life. This little shy kid now is like has a successful business that I can sustain myself with my business. I've been invited to speak at multiple events like this, like Creative Zen, and I've had keynote speeches. I've been on podcasts. I'm truly a business owner today. So if I could do this little shy kid could do this, then you can totally do this on purpose because mine was pure accident. So if you could do it, if I could do it by accident, you can do it on purpose. You can just choose to see yourself as somebody who accomplished goals, even if the path to the goal curves. You need to look back at what you've accomplished and realize that you can do anything. Yeah, and to close, because why not? One of my favorite movie quotes is life moves pretty fast, and if you don't stop and look around once in a while, you could miss it. So that's something that I want to leave you with because life does pass really fast. And before you know it, you go from shy kid to speaking to a bunch of people that you can't even see their faces, and it's scary, right? So yeah, where to find me? You can find me at rawmade on Instagram and Facebook. My website, therawmade.com. Coming soon, I have my signature DIY branding course called Self-Made Solopreneur. And you can sign up to join the list for that at therawmade.com/selfmade. And that's going to be launching in the next couple of weeks. So it's basically a course where I teach you how to brand yourself and launch and get to the point where I've gotten. And that was coming soon. And it also includes, yes, Rima took the course and she took version 0.1 and it's such as phenomenal, and she's launching her own stuff, which is amazing. And it includes access to my consulting. I basically like do Q&As and answer questions as part of the course, which is pretty cool. What else? Oh, well, thank you to Evan and Creative Zen, of course. And honestly, I told Evan this beforehand. I want to open it to any questions. That's where I do best, answering questions. So feel free to ask me questions about life, branding, marketing, anything personal. I'm an open book. I'm an overshare. People who have come to Raw Storytelling know that. They know very intimate things about me. So you can ask me anything you want about anything. And anyways, thank you. Thank you for listening. And that's my story.
I learned some new things about you. I did not know your middle name was Los Angeles.
De Los Angeles, yes. I have a telenovela name.
Okay. And I won't ask you to plan my wedding with future Miss Snow, but glad you.
Well, I did get officiated though. I have officiated weddings. That I will do, but I won't plan it.
Okay. One thing you didn't mention that I know has been impactful on our relationship and on many people's relationships you've become friends with. What's the impact of tarot card readings in your life?
Oh, that's good. That's a good one. So actually, remember that job that I mentioned where the lady was like, you shouldn't study branding, and I couldn't mention the company name. So that was a kind of a bad job. I learned a lot, but she was not a great person to work for. But the last day before I left, the girl that was going to replace me randomly gave me a crystal. Not this one, but she gave me a crystal. And she was like, oh, this is for prosperity or something. And I was like, okay, whatever. And then that led me down a rabbit hole of like witchcraft and pagan like rituals. And I just got really into the witchcraft stuff, right? Which I still kind of practice some of it, not all of it, because it's very time consuming. But I did get into tarot reading. I have so many tarot decks around. And what I've learned is that the way that I use tarot is that it's a way, whatever comes out of the cards, it's a way to ask yourself, why is this subconsciously coming into my mind? So if the card is like of whatever this is, and then, oh, I associate this with like feeling tired, my thought process is like, why am I thinking I'm tired? And I explore that in my mind. And it's been really helpful in life. I pull a tarot card every day and I do tarot readings for my friends, including Evan. It's been really helpful to kind of do self-exploration into why I'm thinking what I'm thinking and kind of uncover those thoughts that I might push away in any other circumstance. So yeah, I've become really connected to tarot. It's the one thing that I've kept. I do have a lot of crystals and I do have incense, but I think tarot is the one thing that I've kept. Including even my company name changed. Originally, my company name was Witchcraft Branding, and then I rebranded to Raw Made a little over a year ago. So even that kind of left. So, but tarot stuck. It stuck. Yeah. Yeah.
Question, Vicky?
Oh no, I just enjoyed meeting Enid and hearing your story. It's very inspiring.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. So yeah, I think that it was really hard to choose what to talk about this time. Because it was like, I typically don't do these type of personal stories where I talk about where it all comes from like my life. I typically talk about branding or something like more business related. But I think I was really inspired to talk about this today because I realized that I'm not the only one that goes around not noticing the accomplishments that we have in life. And and especially during COVID, like we've been alone for so long. I live alone. That it's really, I've lost track of like who I am. And by looking back at this, I was like, oh, I've come really far and I should be proud of myself. And I think that everyone should stop and kind of do that as well. So I'm glad that I got to do it.
100%. And I'm going to echo the sentiments from the chat from Josh. We are all so proud and amazed by you. And even just to think about how much this version of your story that you just shared has changed from when you shared it originally 4 years ago. And I remember you were so relatable and just, a story that anybody, an entrepreneur, a video producer, any human being could relate to. And how Josh was just chatting that it's been so like inspirational to see you become successful, that it really does show and tell me and anybody else that's watching, you can be successful too. You can set out to do whatever your heart and mind desires to do. If it's starting a storytelling show, if it's consulting, if it's branding, if it's coaching, if it's reading tarot cards, if it's just having peace and you know, love in your life. So thank you for sharing that with us and reminding us that we're all more alike than we are different. And I'm so grateful to know you and call you my friend.
Oh, thank you. Yes, I agree. I think that that's my biggest platform. That I kind of I didn't really go into this. I kind of have a weird background where my grandparents were kind of wealthy, and then they weren't, and then my mom was definitely not. So I kind of like bounced with like being of privilege and then not being of privilege, but then still like having that education from being privileged, but then in a not privileged situation. I think that like literally I truly thought for a long time that I couldn't accomplish anything because I came from nothing. And that's absolutely not true. And not only like wealth wise, but in any situation, like, oh, I don't have the skills. I'm like, well, then just learn, you know, or practice. So I think that, yeah, my platform is definitely helping people that's the everyday person. That is like my niche with my own business. It's like, I don't want to work for the big luxury brands of the world. I want to work with the everyday entrepreneur, business owner that's side hustling and believes and has a dream, and they might not have the means to pay a big ass agency for a brand, right? And that's kind of like who I work with, and it's so important to me. I connect with them so much. Like that's who I want to help. So yeah, that's definitely like, I'm happy you said that because that's what I stand for in life. It's like, and the same thing with raw storytelling, which is like why I have my shirt, the We All Have a Story to Tell raw storytelling shirt. I truly believe that we all have a story to tell, and it was really about giving a voice to anybody. I did not say no to people. Like anybody could share a story about absolutely anything. And there was no censoring. There was nothing. It was like unfiltered. It was like, you just share your version of your life, and that's what mattered. So that's what I truly believe in, you know? Yeah.
So I want to do that whenever that starts back again.
Well, right now, it's purely the podcast. So if anybody, the best thing about that is that raw storytelling is now, because thankfully due to COVID, I'm accepting stories from anywhere around the world. Before it was limited to South Florida, but now anybody can send a story from around the world, and it'll be shared on the podcast. So it's even better. You don't even have to wait. Yeah.
Care to share 1, 2, or 3 of your favorite high-level stories aside from the person that took a shit on the side of the holy mountain in Israel?
Oh, oh my gosh. Yeah, actually, well, my number one story that I always mention when I get asked this question, the number one story that was shared at Raw Storytelling for me, not for, it's actually, I put a poll out once, and everyone had different stories. So everyone takes whatever they want to take. But for me, it was a girl who, her name is Daniela Mitrovic. Her brand is Mush Moon. She's an artist. And she came to me super shy as well. And she's like, I have this little story. And she was like, it's not a big deal. And her story was that she suffered from a kind of depression that was I don't know the technical name, but it was basically a depression where like she had a voice in her head that told her to kill herself constantly, like all the time. And she had done a lot of therapy, a lot of medication, a lot of treatment. And the last thing that the doctor was like, you need a lobotomy. Like this is 15 or something. You need a lobotomy. And she was like, no, I don't want to do a lobotomy. And she started doing some research, and she found out that there were some experiments from, I forget what university, that maybe I think it was Oxford or something, or whoever, that they did experiments where they mixed mushrooms with LSD, and those were used to treat people with depression. And she's like, well, I have nothing else to lose. And so she put a concoction of LSD and mushrooms and put on some Miami Sound Machine. She loved Miami Sound Machine, Miami Sound Machine YouTube playlist, and had a therapeutic trip that basically, when she came out of that trip, she cured her own depression and became an artist through it. Like, she found that she was an artist, and then basically has been living a very happy life since then. So that was like an amazing story. That's my top one that I always talk about.
Is that on the podcast?
Yes, that is on the episode. I know the episode by name. It is Far From Home. So that's, if you look for in the feed for the one called Far From Home, she's on that episode at Raw Storytelling. And I think far from that, I think more than telling about other stories, I think the important part is to say that I'm always surprised by the type of stories that I would get. So for example, I've had 2 miscarriage stories. One of them is very intense and sad, and the other one is hilarious. Like, we were laughing the whole time. So I love the idea that I was able to create a platform where people could share about daily stuff that happens to a lot of us, and each in their own way, and we could experience it from different perspectives, because like even something like a miscarriage could be seen in different ways. So I think that's pretty cool.
100%. And we also have some video replays. I believe we have Daniela's on Choose 954. On Facebook, if you go to Choose 954 and search Raw Storytelling, and to see Daniela's expressions and mannerisms and positivity.
Oh God, it's so good. Yeah.
It was one of the better stories. For the record, don't recommend mushrooms and LSD at the same time. Traditionally, you can do just the mushrooms, but it did have a profound impact on her life. And she's a very talented artist. We're very glad to support a beautiful human being. Right. And so grateful for you creating the space to share those stories.
And a first-time storyteller too. Yeah. That's
Amen.
Yeah. Evan also shared a couple times.
I shared, and it was a very therapeutic experience when we went through my background to get to the point of the story we were trying to share. The first time, it was about how being a bad kid led me to being a good guy. And then I think the other one was about not quitting and not giving up throughout all the shit that, not getting support, not having a girlfriend, and not having all these things. And just those experiences, I listened to it the other day in preparation of this talk, to put it out in the universe, kind of like took a weight off my shoulder, just getting that story out there. So we are forever grateful for you, Enid. We encourage you guys to check out the podcast, check out some of the video replays on social media. Feel free to connect and engage with Enid. If you like these events, we'll continue doing them as long as we have speakers and an audience every second Friday morning of the month. We'd love to get it back in person, where it's obviously a completely different experience, but we'll keep doing it as we do it now virtually with the current situation that we're in. And if you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out to me, Evan Snow, at evansnow13, Evan at choose954.com. Feel free to reach out to Enid. Feel free to reach out to AdFed and American Advertising Federation. Thank you, Charlton, for tuning in, and appreciate you guys spending a little bit of your Friday morning with us. We hope you got some inspiration and positivity from this, and have a great rest of your weekend.